at a total cost of 2.7 billion US dollars. And the projects, several of which entered service throughout the past year, include the Upper Egypt West Asyut Power Station that has a production capacity amounting to 1,000 megawatts. Actually, the West Asyut Power Station was constructed by a consortium at a cost of 776.5 million US dollars and began operations in 2 phases in May and August 2015. In order to shed more light on this topic, we are very much delighted to have with us Dr. Mohammed Fouad, economic expert and member of the House of Representatives. Good afternoon to you, Doctor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Doctor. Now, the significance of this inauguration, especially that the President inaugurated 8 power stations in addition to the Asyut one. There were several inaugurated via video call. And before that, he inaugurated also a solar power plant in Siwa. There were several memorandums of agreements with a variety of countries like Japan and France concerning energy and renewable energy as well.
The whole idea comes in to solve what the President Abdel Fattah Sisi has vowed to in 2014, which is to resolve the Egypt power crisis. This has it's a twofold story. Part of it is for the residential power cuts, which Egypt suffered from in 2013, 2014, which has led to great public discontent, notably in 2013. And the President Abdel Fattah Sisi, when he came to the presidency, when he won the presidency in 2014, he was faced with a tough challenge of a power shortage which has enveloped the entire country. So part of it was on the residential part. The second part of it is also for commercial and industrial use, because in 2015, in order to lessen the impact, Egypt has shifted much of its production towards the residential sector, which has caused a little bit of disruption in some of the energy-intensive production. So this comes in as a testament to a resolution which has taken place.
Okay. Sir, Minister of Electricity Mohammed Shakir said that as much as 746 million US dollars is being invested in the new 8-unit combined cycle power plant, which is expected to produce about 1,000 megawatts. In terms of figures, we're talking numbers here, how are these figures related to investments, if we're talking about investments in this particular field?
Well, in order to get the picture, what we want to do is increase the power production by 3,800 megawatts. So the Asyut project will, at the cost of 775 million, will add the 1,000. The total investment in this sector will amount to about 2.7 billion, and this is to clear the gap. And for the first time in the past 4 years, we are by the end of 2016, we're expected to see surplus in power production. I think it is important to take this time to appreciate what we are going through. Dr. Mohammed Shakir al-Marqabi, the Minister of Power, has witnessed harsh criticism in 2015 when he was appointed at a time where you just can't build power plants overnight. But this is not only the end of the story. There's also talks about El Daba nuclear power plant, which will bring Egypt into a very rich surplus area, which will help to come to the investment question,
yes,
give the environment of investment. In 2015, in March, we have to remember that one of the sessions which was held in the Sharm el-Sheikh conference was titled Solving the Egypt power problem, and it was being highlighted as a major deterrent to investment, because nobody wants to invest in a country where you have power problems.
Sure.
Well, in his speech, as he was inaugurating the power plant, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi mentioned how that actually the project or this phase of inaugurating 3 units of the Asyut plant was a massive and an important step because it was taken in almost a year. Also, he mentioned Daba and said that it's actually one of the safest, and it will be measures will be employed in it. Now, in terms of El Daba plant itself, which will cost almost around 26 billion US dollars. How fast can we start that? Like now we're finalizing the contracts, but how long would it take till we really have that power plant?
When talks came about this particular project, and notably following the President Putin visit, the timeline which is being talked about was about 5 years, a 5-year timeline. But however, what we want to make sure that our viewers understand that El Daba is not only going to resolve a power shortage problem, because the power shortage problem is being already resolved by the actual turbine power generating stations which we have opened, like Asyut, also the other renewable energy like what we're doing with EDF following the French president visit. But El Daba will just change the mix of power, because Egypt currently is almost 90% on gas powered turbines, and what we're aiming to do is sort of divest or diversify our portfolio of energy, and this is the main importance of El Daba.
Okay, Dr. Fouad, now certain measures have been taken to subsidize the energy. How do you see these measures? How do you evaluate these measures?
In terms of the energy subsidy, and there've been a lot of talks, and starting from 2014 and 2015, the government is heavily subsidizing the power segment, and that's why, to a great extent, it is not one of the segments which invites a lot of private investments, specifically due to the problems of tariffs. Now, on the renewable energy part, the government is still working out a law to determine the price at which is going to buy power from the private segments. So I think the question of subsidy will to a great extent will always limit any private investments within the power generating segment.
Well, to what extent, following up with what Hala was saying, to what extent would the decisions to produce highly efficiently natural gas-fired power plants and wind power installations and renewable energy, to what extent would that affect and reflect on the lives of the citizens, everyday Egyptians?
I think one of the things is it's when we talk about renewable energy, it's the fact that you want to get away from finite resources like fossil fuel and petroleum-based power generation. We've been always problematic due to fluctuation in oil and international oil prices. In the past 18 months, because the price of oil was on the lower end, the government has not felt the pinch in terms of the subsidy which is paying. So part of getting into the renewable energy segment, we will never be in a position where we're going to replace nor fossil fuel, neither the nuclear power generation. But what we're going to see probably in the strategy that we're doing, I mean, it was been highlighted in 2020 to have 20% of the power generation in Egypt coming through renewable sources, and this has been the highlight of what was the deals with the 5 protocols which have been signed with the French electrician EDF during the President Hollande's visit.
Yes. Dr. Fouad, contracts also have been signed to produce high-efficiency natural gas-fired power plants and wind power installations that will boost Egypt's power generation capacity for a supply of additional 14.4 megawatts to Egypt's national grid. Now, will this be reflected to our daily lives? Would the normal Egyptian citizen feel such impact on him?
I think we're already feeling this because we've started already in the hot days, and Thankfully, touch wood,
So far, we're not suffering from shortages.
So far, we're not suffering from power outages. I mean, power outages. It's basically. I mean, just to give the viewers and everybody an idea, even the new Al Saud power station is not only helping a segment. We are all operating off one national grid, and this has been the protocol followed for the past years, and also. Dr. Mohammed Shakir al-Marqabi also has to be credited with this, because we're looking, when outages were happening, we're looking to load balance, because we know that every day the grid is short. It's very easy to calculate, for example, that total needed production is 28,000 megawatts, and with some of the station which requires a little bit of maintenance, and plus the leakage which happens into the grids, we might be down to 22,000 megawatts production, while the demand is 26, so we have 4,000 megawatts shortage, and this is what creates the problem. But so far, if we continue in the same route we're going, what citizens would appreciate is the fact that we're not going to have a barge. And to be honest, this is a curse or a problem not only that Egypt is suffering from, but other big economies in Africa, notably like Nigeria. I was recently in Guinea, and the power outage problem is a huge problem in the African continent, which I am looking forward to see Egypt look at this to be a thing of the past.
Well, I'd like to ask you now, once these projects are implemented, what are the fields where these new investments are expected to contribute?
In terms of the power?
In terms of power, yeah.
Okay. You have 2 or 3 industries which are very power intensive. First, the iron and steel, all the foundries, they're very much power intensive, and we have seen the government has shown some leniency into providing subsidies into
providing the energy at a lower cost for steel factories.
For steel factories, because the steel factories are power hungry. They really need a lot of steel, and the problem is it wasn't as much price. I mean, to give you figures, the steel production in Egypt has been reduced by about 30% in 2015 due to the lack of power. It was not only even a question of price; it's just a question of appropriation. You have a national grid. You're going to either have lights on in homes, or you have to choose to basically lower your capacity. But I think it's a good sign that we are in the position now to provide some of those steel foundries, some of those steel manufacturers with the power much needed for their production. Because you also have to understand that you have families which basically are benefiting from the fact that they have people working, and also the economy will benefit from resolving this power problem.
Well, yeah. What about the labor? Now we're actually inaugurating a lot of power plants. So do we need now, do we have enough labor, enough expats to be able to handle these power plants? And we're diversifying it. So we were used to having like maybe coal, having electricity, power stations, but now we're going to wind, solar, and even biogas.
That's correct. And I think part of the protocols which are being signed is basically how to train up people. We're very much used to coal or gas turbines, which is basically, as I said, 90% of the power mix in Egypt has been coming this way. But when you have the global players which are coming into Egypt, parts and parcels of the protocol is how to train people up. And of course, when we come and talk about nuclear energy, not only that we're talking about training, but training, safety standards, which are going to be at the highest levels as well.
Okay, since we're raising this issue now, I have a question that perhaps relates to you being a member of the House of Representatives. I want to discuss with you the issue of awareness, the awareness of the citizens, and how can we raise their awareness regarding not only rationalizing the usage of energy, but also feeling the impact of everything, shifting to alternative sources of energy. So you, as a member of the House of Representatives, how would you discuss this in Parliament?
I think it's a social responsibility at the end of the day. I mean, energy is another, it's a commodity. I mean, energy could be seen as a commodity. I mean, you use it, you pay for it, so it's not a problem. I mean, you have two problems. The first problem is that at a big level, energy in Egypt is subsidized. So it's not a commodity for people that you use. I mean, when you use it, the government is paying much of this particular use. It's not a free-for-all. It's not like in the West where you can use it at your leisure. It's not a problem, and you're paying 100% of it. Here we're not paying 100% of it. So the more the use for it's basically taking from a portion which could be allotted to building a hospital, to building new schools.
Yes.
So this is why I always encourage people responsible usage, because there's a bit of a subsidy involved. The second part is that we're also working on finite resources. The oil, whether in Egypt or in the world, is not going to last forever. So this is another angle from which people should always be looking to rationalize, because you might use it all now, the future generation will suffer from the same problem.
Now, Doctor, is there a role that the private sector can play to support the energy and the energy supply in Egypt?
Absolutely, and most of the projects which have been built recently have been built based upon the expertise of the private sector. The very astute project that we're talking about was built in partnership with the Orascom Group. The groups which are going to be working with the EDF. On the 5 renewable energy protocols is going to also have 2 or 3 Egyptian partners. So the local partners are playing a big role into all those protocols.
Okay, what are the prospects of the use of renewable energy, especially solar energy here in Egypt?
I think it's and I have to say I'm not the energy expert, but just based upon economics only, the power generation coming from solar energy, if you compare the cost of production to the output produced, it is not the type of energy which could be expanded into industrial use or very heavy use. So it's good alternative if you channel this to residential use. To have just like they have in a lot of places in Europe and elsewhere. And it's good enough for the residential section to do this. And residential section consumes about 65% of the energy production. But what we're looking for is the building up of such power plants of renewable energy is not megawatt per megawatt. It's more expensive to build the renewable energy in terms of capex, in terms of initial investment. It's more expensive. On a running cost, if you look at a 20, 30-year time span, the cost of generation becomes lower. Okay. So this is the initial investment for building capable solar energy production plants is much more expensive megawatt per megawatt when you compare it with gas turbines. But we're trying to get into this segment just because the resources are limited, because we cannot rely on doing this.
Okay.
Well, Doctor, actually Japan will be financing Egypt with almost 243 million US dollars as a loan for 3 electricity distributing companies in Cairo, Alexandria and the Delta region in terms of clean coal. Now, that's an interesting term, clean coal. Would you tell us more about that?
Okay. A big debate which was raised in 2014, 2015, which there have been talks about, and specifically when we had problems with oil, is that we're going to go into coal, into electricity production via coal. Now, there are a lot of advanced filtering techniques which have been put in place, and I mean, you have a lot of countries which are relying predominantly on coal-powered electricity production. China, you have 60% of their production coming out of coal, and all these countries are using clean alternatives. I mean, we're always looking at coals at smugs, smoke, health problems, but this is not
climate change.
Climate change problems, ozone issues, but greenhouse effects. But this is not entirely the case. The technology now is advanced to the level where it's going to limit a lot of those impacts.
Okay, we have also been hearing about green jobs, the term green jobs. Do you see the challenges to the labor market policies in creating green jobs? How viable is that?
I'm not sure I understand very well the term.
Green jobs, I mean, creating jobs that are environment friendly, if I may say, when it comes to energy use, of course.
I think there's going to be a lot of work done around this, specifically as we move on, as we've talked about in an earlier question, is that currently we don't have much of the expertise in this particular segment, but as we grow,
don't have the awareness of the people
yes,
as well.
But as we grow into this particular renewable energy, specifically with the protocols done with the French companies, I think we will expand more into that.
Okay.
Well, Doctor, actually Egypt is diversifying its partners in terms of energy. So we have Japan. Japan will be helping us with the 20 megawatt, with coal, and the 20 megawatt solar plant, which will be in Hurghada. Then we have Russia with nuclear. We have also France as well.
With Edison,
now your comment on this diversification.
It is important, and I think it's a good decision. It's important to have several partners because you can have several technologies in place. You can have different views, and you can basically get the best out of every domain. And some of it might be economical, and it just depends on where you can get the best economical deal. I think it's very important from a pure economical perspective is to have multiple partners. That there is no particular dependency. Because Egypt, as it stands, we depend in our development on power generation. It's been a problem which has happened. So we don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Okay. Now I want to get back to the issue of awareness. We have seen on the social media the Egyptian citizen who actually the first one to sell power to the government, and he was. He put the check with the 4,000 pounds. Do you think that now we are shifting into a new era of not only using or rationalizing the usage of power, but also trying to make profit out of it? I think from the part of the citizens now.
I think it's going to happen, but part of it is to stabilize the tariff discussion. What is the price at which the government is going to be buying power? I think. It's not going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. We're probably 10 years away from doing this. Because first, I think if we go in phases, first thing is you want to generate power power surplus to cover what we are using the conventional method. Second is getting into changing the mix, like the strategy going 20% of renewable energy. Then somewhere along this story, the question of awareness is going to be.
This is a very alarming thing to me because in our daily lives we tend to waste a lot of energy without even knowing.
Absolutely.
I mean, for example, I was at home and my son told me that just leaving the LED lights of the AC, the air conditioner, on, it's consuming energy. I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
So I mean, now kids know because I mean, okay, it's good that the younger generation they know that, but. For grown-ups, for adults, how can we know that? I mean, we need to work on this. We need campaigns, awareness campaigns for the ordinary citizens from all various social categories on how to understand how we are using the energy.
Yeah, and I think it's very important because otherwise what we're going to feel is that we're going to slowly remove subsidies, and then at that point we'll understand that this overuse is creating a burden on the budget. So I think there are a lot of programs that needs to be done in order to do this.
Well, also Egypt will be partnering with Saudi Arabia in terms of biogas. Now, how advanced are we in that field?
I think we're still experimenting in this in terms of those type of alternate energy, biofuel and alternate energy. In the early 2001, 2002, a lot of talks has been coming up, and this is going to be a big development. The problem is, as long as fossil fuel is still dominant in the world, not a lot of attention has been shifted into these particular segments. I think we should experiment, and I think it's very important because, once again, as we are diversifying global partners, we should always aim at diversifying power production sources. So in the 20% mix of renewable, we should look at a certain percentage that coming out of biogas.
Okay, Dr. Muhammad Fayed, economic expert and member of the House of Representatives. Thank you very much. You've been providing us with very valuable information. Thank you very much for being with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to watch a report with our colleague Nada Rabia. Noor Shirbini, the Egyptian squash player, has been crowned as the world champion, the world squash champion. We'll see the report and then we'll be right back. Stay with us.